Julie Gwen Davis, formerly known as Princess Blue. At 5 p.m. on September 10th, 1990, a man traveling Highway 288 near Manville, Texas, pulled over to the side of Brazoria County Road in order to relieve himself. It was here that he noticed a pile of debris past the guardrail. Upon closer inspection, he found a human skull and dozens of bones stuffed inside a tire. Alarmed, the man returned home to his wife, where the couple promptly phoned the police. When investigators arrived on the scene, they estimated they were able to recover about 60% of the victim's skeleton. There was no clothing at the site, but there were pieces of jewelry which were placed into envelopes and sealed. The location of the body was sparsely populated, and the road itself a dead end, making it the perfect place to conceal the remains, and detectives suspected that their victim's end hadn't been either accidental or voluntary. Jane Doe was estimated to have died a year or less prior to her discovery. As Brazoria County had no medical examiner, her autopsy was conducted on September 11th by Dr. Eduardo Bellas, who was with the Harris County Medical Examiner's office. Unfortunately, it didn't reveal a whole lot of information. It was discovered that Jane Doe's upper left tooth had been surgically removed at one point in her life, and she had 2 amalgam fillings in her teeth and numerous untreated cavities. She also sported 2 fractured ribs and a defect on the bone beneath her left knee, which has also been described as a possible benign tumor. There were no drugs in Jane Doe's system. The young girl was estimated to be between the ages of 15 and 19, and have a height somewhere between 4'8" and 5'2". Authorities were unable to determine her cause of death, but thought she was either Hispanic or mixed race, specifically white and Hispanic. Investigators ruled Jane Doe's death as a homicide due to the circumstances in which her body was found. It is unclear why, but it took detectives another 16 years before they examined Jane Doe's distinctive jewelry. In August of 2006, her case was reopened, and an officer on the case discovered her belongings which had previously been overlooked. Jane Doe wore a silver ring with a scroll design, a silver ring with a turquoise stone in the shape of a unicorn or horse, a gold ring with 6 clear stones, a pearl beaded bracelet, 2 silver rings which are noted to be almost identical, and lastly, an inexpensive metal class ring from Robert E. Lee High School, which is now known as Margaret Long Wisdom High School and located in southwest Houston, Texas. The ring had a circular, sapphire-colored stone in the center and was dated 1975. As Jane Doe was determined to be in her mid to late teens at the time of her demise, investigators theorized that this ring had been passed down to her by a family member or perhaps belonged to an older companion. The letter L was inlaid into the ring. This was reportedly optional for those who got the ring, and stood for Lee. However, it has not been ruled out that this L was hand-carved in. Detectives also discovered that the ring had been resized twice. It was originally an American size 7.5, and was found on Jane Doe as a size 9.5. Jane Doe was dubbed as Princess Blue, in reference to this distinctive piece of jewelry. That same year, advances in forensics and DNA testing showed that Jane Doe was not mixed race nor Hispanic, but that she was white. She also had someone with African DNA recently enter her family, possibly a grandparent, and could have been as old as 21 at the time of her death. Following this new information, the Manville Police Department put together a new image of what Jane Doe might have looked like while alive, and interviewed dozens of Robert E. Lee High School students after they found the ring, but nobody recognized the young girl's image. A year later, in June 2007, sketches of Jane Doe were released to TV stations and newspapers throughout Texas. Although numerous leads came in, none of them led to Jane Doe's identity, nor the name of her killer. Just a month after this, authorities began to suspect that serial killer Roy Allen Stewart was responsible for the crime, noting that the time frame of Jane Doe's death fit that in which Stewart was active. Additionally, he had been present in towns where girls of a similar age had been slain. However, Stewart refused to cooperate with the police and falsely stated that he was imprisoned between 1989 and 1990. He also claimed to not recognize the sketches of Jane Doe. Eventually, though, Stewart was ruled out as a person of interest. Princess Blue's case largely came to a standstill over the next decade or so. In November of 2019, a Texas news station named ABC 13 covered the case, attempting to generate new leads. It noted that Jane Doe had a black parent or grandparent on her mother's side, and the station revealed that her remains had been sent to a lab in Austin for DNA testing in order to get a more accurate reconstruction of what she may have looked like while alive. However, she would be identified before this testing was complete. Over in the city of Orange, Texas, a man named Danny Davis gave his DNA to a Texas Ranger, hoping to track his long-lost sister, who hadn't been seen in over 30 years. The Ranger thought that Danny's sister was a Jane Doe, found deceased in Jarrell, Texas in 1989. She was nicknamed Corona Girl because she wore a t-shirt for Corona beer. But in January 2020, she was identified as 17-year-old Sue Ann Husky, who went missing from Sulphur Springs, Texas, the same year her body was found. Although the Ranger's hunch didn't pan out, Danny's DNA did get a hit on databases when it was found to match with Princess Blue. There was a 99.9% certainty that Princess Blue was Danny's missing sister, Julie Gwen Davis, who went missing from New Orleans in 1987. In June of 2020, investigators announced that Princess Blue had officially been identified. The Davis siblings were shocked at the results. Danny noted that he had not heard of Princess Blue's case, and he wouldn't have believed it's her if he wasn't told the DNA matched. News stations asked if Julie had any connection to Houston or Robert Lee High, but were told the only thing the family thought that could possibly link the two was that Julie's husband was from Houston. At least, that's what she'd told them. Julie was born to Danny Carroll Davis, a welder and pipe fitter, and Edna Ray Davis, a nurse's aide, on October 19, 1968, making her around 20 or 21 at the time of her death. She was the eldest of 6 children. Her siblings described Julie as a kind and gentle free spirit who loved to laugh. Her pearl bracelet had been given to her by her mother, and her family reportedly lived a rather nomadic lifestyle, moving homes numerous times, although they always stayed in Orange. From the age of 12, Julie began leaving home often, traveling between Houston, Orange, and New Orleans in Louisiana. She seemed to have officially left home at the age of 16 and married 2 years later. On one of her trips back to see her family, she appeared with a tall, dark-haired man with a dark, full beard. She introduced him as her husband, though investigators have been unable to find an official marriage license for Julie. They suspected the marriage was a common law one. Danny described his sister's husband as standoffish. This appears to have been the last time she was seen by family, as Danny recalled, quote, "That's the last thing I remember of her, giving me a hug, telling me she loved me, and she broke down in tears and walked away. And that's the last time I saw her." Julie's parents are no longer alive, but her siblings are happy to cooperate fully with detectives, who are still unsure of the young woman's connection with the Robert Lee class ring. In November of 2020, Julie's sister Stephanie met with law enforcement, where they returned her remains along with some of her jewelry, including the 2 silver bands and pearl bracelet. They continue to hold on to the class ring, as it's an important part of the investigation. Danny told news outlets, quote, "I miss her. I'd give anything to see her again. She was always smiling, always happy." Alicia Ann Heinrich, formerly known as Delta Dawn or Baby Jane. In the early hours of December 3rd, 1982, on Mississippi State Highway 63, numerous drivers spotted a concerning scene. A woman, dressed in blue jeans and a blue plaid shirt, walking back and forth, seemingly distressed, with a blonde, shoeless, and coatless baby girl in her arms. The pair were last seen walking west along Interstate 10, close to the truck scales at the Alabama-Mississippi border between 12 and 1 a.m. Although several people stopped and asked the woman if she needed help, she declined every time. These eyewitness accounts were corroborated by a woman monitoring the radio conversations between truck drivers that morning. The woman reported that the drivers had been raising a boatload of hell about an anguished woman walking along the interstate with a young child, refusing any and all offers of help. 2 days later, on December 5th at 7 a.m., a truck driver called the local police department to report a woman's body floating face down in the Escatawpa River along Interstate 10. He described the woman as wearing a blue plaid shirt. A deputy from the Jackson County Sheriff's Office was dispatched to the scene, but was unable to locate the body of the woman in the river. Upon widening his search, however, he discovered the still body of a little blonde girl, partially submerged and face up close to the bridge. The scene was heavily covered in weeds and plant life, making it impossible for passing motorists to have seen her. She had been dead for between 36 to 48 hours. The area of the river where the woman's body was seen was dragged, but turned up no remains of an adult female. Helicopters and boats assisted in the search, and the underwater search unit was brought in, but still there was no trace of a woman in a blue plaid shirt. That said, the unit was able to find some remains, that of a young African-American man who was found on December 8th. John Doe was between the ages of 18 and 22 and was discovered 60 yards away from baby Jane Doe, beneath the bridge. Detectives suspected he was thrown from the bridge, but he had also been shot to death and deceased for at least 6 months, and so was not thought to be connected to the case of baby Jane. Investigators determined that the young girl, who was later dubbed Delta Dawn, had been thrown from the bridge. It also appeared that someone had attempted to smother her beforehand, leading to the theory that she was thrown into the water while believed to be dead. In reality, baby Jane was still alive. She inhaled water from the river and drowned. Otherwise, the young girl was healthy and thought to be between the ages of 18 and 24 months. 12 of her milk teeth had come in, and she was described as being white with strawberry blonde hair. Her eyes were clouding by the time she was discovered, so it could not be determined what color they were, although it was thought they were either brown or blue. Additionally, baby Jane's face was in a, quote, recognizable condition. She weighed around 25 pounds and stood at around 2'6". There were no signs of malnourishment, and she was dressed in a pink and white checkered dress from the brand Cradle Togs, which had 3 flowers on its front and a nappy. Soon after baby Jane was discovered, she was connected to the woman with the baby who had been seen on Interstate 10. The prevailing theory at the time was that she was killed by her mother, who subsequently took her own life. Since she was identified, however, this notion has generally been dismissed. In 2009, baby Jane's body was exhumed so a DNA sample could be taken. However, no matches were made at this time. Over the years, several forensic reconstructions were made, but again, none led to her name. Finally, in December of 2020, 38 years after baby Jane was discovered, investigators announced that they now had a name for her, Alicia Ann Heinrich of Joplin, Missouri. Genealogy linked the 18-month-old to a woman named Teresa Spencer, whose sister was 23-year-old Gwendolyn Clemens, Alicia's mother. Gwendolyn was divorced from Alicia's father and was not reported as missing until the toddler was identified. Mother and daughter vanished on or around November 24, 1982, from Kansas City, Missouri. Reportedly, Gwendolyn planned on moving to Florida with Alicia and her boyfriend, who has never been publicly named. She intended on having a fresh start following her divorce, but the unidentified boyfriend ended up returning to Missouri alone. Although he is now deceased, he has been described as both a suspect and a person of interest in news articles. As of 2021, Gwendolyn's fate is still unknown, although law enforcement have stated that they are assuming the worst. Some theorize that the 23-year-old had a mental break. Others still buy into the murder-suicide theory. For many, however, Gwendolyn's unnamed boyfriend is the most suspicious person in the case. It is largely believed that she was the woman standing on the bridge on December 3rd, her daughter in her arms. Online sleuths have theorized that she was distressed because she was attempting to flee an abusive relationship, but at this moment in time, it's unclear if we will ever have answers in this case. Gwendolyn Clemens went missing on or around November 24th, 1982, from Kansas City, Missouri. She is a 23-year-old white woman standing between 5'2" and 5'8", and weighing between 105 and 135 pounds. Authorities believe it's likely she met with foul play, although other possibilities cannot yet be ruled out.